Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is the Essentials Kit for D&D 5th edition by Wizards of the Coast. Okay, first a bit of history. Released as a third in the line of beginner's sets, the Essentials Kit has had two predecessors. 2014's D&D Starter Set and the Stranger Things themed D&D Starter Set in March 2019. This set was released in July of 2019. The contents, according to the cover, have been designed for 2 to 6 players. Right, to the cover. Here we have an excellent piece by Grzegorz Rakowski, which really does capture the essence of D&D, although quite why the wizard appears to be using an ice spell against a white dragon is a bit puzzling. Okay, to the inside. The box is full of great things. We have a decent dice set, which has multiple d6s, but not multiple d4s for some reason. A fold-out Essentials kit box. A fairly okay GM screen. Codes for D&D Beyond for the contents of this box, as well as a 50% off voucher for an electronic player's handbook. A pile of tear along the dotted line cards that include initiative, conditions, magic items and quests. Some sidekick quick reference cards which includes a portrait on one side and a description of their character traits on the other. A double-sided map of a small region of Faerun Sword Coast which has Phandalin on the back. 6 character sheets made from quite nice paper. The D&D Essentials Kit rulebook. And an adventure to play using all of the contents of the set, Dragon of Icespire Peak. First up, let's take a look at the 64-page Essentials Kit rulebook. The first thing it goes into is an overview of what to expect when playing D&D, and it gives a brief breakdown of how to play. It covers the game dice, the core system mechanic and the other rules to remember. That being things like always round down, specific beats general, and effects with the same name don't stack, the kind of thing we would expect from D&D. After this, it gives us a step-by-step guide in creating a character, from choosing your race and class, working out your hit points, proficiencies and the like, as well as determining your ability scores and calculating the modifiers. It's worth mentioning at this point that the Essentials Kit gives you a severely cut down version of the player's handbook, with not all of the races and classes present, and the maximum level is 6. Totally par for the course for a product like this. It goes into the finer details such as your character's gender, background and alignment, and gives a brief paragraph on what to expect from the alignments. It goes into your character's personal characteristics such as your traits, ideals, bonds and flaws, as well as your height and weight, and quickly covers equipment and levelling up. After this we move on to the character races. In this set only 4 races are covered: Dwarf, Elf, Halfling and Human. It details Dwarf first, giving the lowdown on how they are usually played in D&D, giving their traits and 2 variants, the Hill Dwarf and the Mountain Dwarf. Elves are similarly treated, extra attention being given to their names, and you also have 2 variants, High Elves and Wood Elves. Next is Halflings, where Lightfoot and Stout variants are given. And last up we have Humans, who are given the least attention and are covered with the Variety in All Things paragraph. Next are the character classes. First is the Bard, where it details all you need to know to get them to 6th level, including a cut-down spell list to choose from. It also covers the Bard colleges of Lore and Valour. After this we have the Cleric, and as per the Bard, gives you all you need to know to get them to 6th level, and gives you 3 domains, Divine, Life and War, to allow you to add a degree of customization. Next is the Fighter. At 3rd level you get to choose a martial stereotype, with the Champion and Eldritch Knight being available, one being a classic commander type and the other a kind of fighter mage. After the Fighter we have the Rogue. As per the Fighter, we have 2 roguish archetypes, the Thief and Arcane Trickster. One what may consider the classic definition in D&D terms of what a rogue does, and the other is a kind of thief mage. Lastly we have the Wizard. As per the other spellcasting classes, these have an extremely cut down spell list, and 2 arcane traditions are listed, the School of Invocation and School of Transmutation. Following this we have a section on backgrounds. Here we have 5, the Acolyte, Criminal, Entertainer, Sage and Soldier, which have each of the suggested characteristics, personality trait, ideal, bond and flaw, with multiple random tables to allow you to roll and form a character. Next we have Chapter 2, Playing the Game. Here it goes into the mechanics of advantage and disadvantage, saving throws, ability checks and contests, and also a chopped down version of the skills list. It includes the how and when for all of the ability score checks, and which skills apply, and then we move on to how will the environment affect play. It covers movement with the likes of travel, but also physical activities such as climbing, swimming, crawling, jumping and inevitably falling, as well as the rules for suffocation and vision and light. After this it moves on to social interaction, where it suggests that actually role-playing out the encounter is the best way to deal with things, but that certain ability checks can be key in determining the outcome. Lastly, here we have resting covered. Following this we go into combat. It covers the order of the combat round and how surprise works, and then gives some discussion on how your turn works, and how many actions you can take. It has details on the likes of movement in combat, taking into account different terrain and the like, and then has a section on combat actions in which it details each of the things you can do and what type of action they use. It covers the usual 1 or 20 rolls, cover, and the difference between ranged and melee attacks, with things like opportunity attacks, 2-weapon fighting, and grappling given some consideration. After this we move on to damage and healing. Here it covers the basic damage roll, critical hit, damage types, and damage resistances and vulnerabilities. We have all of the rules around healing and what happens when 0 hit points are reached, death saving throws and the like. There's a brief section on mounted combat and underwater combat, and then we move on to chapter 3, equipment. It talks about the basics such as coinage and selling treasure, and then moves on to the specifics of things like armour and shields, giving us a basic table of the most common types and their in-game modifiers. After this we move on to weapons, where it discusses the types, proficiencies and properties of each weapon listed here. Things like finesse weapons and reach weapons are covered. Following this we have a fairly decent list of adventuring gear and weapons, including all pertinent gaming information. After this it gives descriptions of the various adventurer packs, then gives the game usage for the special items such as the arcane focus and the healer's kit. It covers mounts and services, food, drink and lodging, and then it moves on to magic items. The scenario contains a number of magic items and it gives descriptions of them here. All of them give a definite D&D feel. After this we move on to chapter 4, spells. It goes into the basic discussion of what a spell actually is and gives a brief introduction to the different schools of magic. It talks about spell level and the difference between known and prepared spells, as well as spell slots. We have a bit on cantrips and rituals, and then it goes into the mechanics of how spells are actually cast, covering armour, casting time, range and components, whether they be verbal, somatic or material. It highlights the difference in duration between instant and concentration, and then moves on to targets and area of effect, including the cube, cylinder, line and spheres of effect. We also have the simple calculations of how saving throws and attack rolls are dealt with. The next section details the spells that are available in the Essentials kit. It gives us 12 pages of spells for use with the character classes in this set, and it includes many of the classics like Magic Missile, Hold Person and Web. Finally, at the end of this book we have the stats for sidekicks. It gives us a spellcaster, expert and warrior and how they level up. On the back cover of the book we have all of the conditions listed as well as their in-game effects. Okay, so let's move on to the second book. I'm not going to spoil the scenario here other than to say that it can be run for 1 to 5 characters of level 1, which contradicts the front cover slightly. It's fully mapped and illustrated throughout and is designed in such a way as to teach you D&D. It's sandbox in nature and each location designed for characters of certain levels, and the scenario ends quite handily with a section on where to go once you've finished. The D&D Essentials set is a very good example of how a beginner's box should aspire to be, though it's not perfect by any means. It's nicely presented and full coloured throughout, with great art and has a feeling of being something that a lot of thought has been given to. Once you're finished with what is contained here, it does lead you on quite nicely to full fat D&D, with the 50% off coupon for the Player's Handbook on D&D Beyond being a nice addition. The chopped down rule set is fine for the contents of this box, though the glaring omission of feats stands out as a bit of a miscalculation, as you will encounter them in the Player's Handbook and wonder why you weren't told about them in this. And though it is nice to see the 4 classic classes of Fighter, Wizard, Cleric and Rogue being rightfully present, the addition of Bard seems a little strange, as it is mostly considered a subclass of Rogue. The character races are again the classic D&D ones in Human, Dwarf, Elf and Halfling, which is fine, though Half-Elves and Half-Orcs are also as old as the game itself, so it would have been nice to see them as options. The equipment section seems to be the most fully fleshed out part of the set, and the spell selection presented here is pretty good too, and the rules for everything are nicely explained and make sense. At the time of writing, this set is £20 on Amazon UK and around $21 on Amazon US, which is actually really good value for money for what could equate to a good few months of gaming. It's definitely a well done feeder product for the rest of the D&D line, though I do feel that a new player moving from this to the Player's Handbook could have some difficulty taking in a game that is, in relative terms, so vast in scale, history and product line. At the same time though, I have no doubts that new players looking to get into the hobby will absolutely love what is presented here. I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Also, if you're interested in buying this product, I've put some links below. Lastly, if you like what I produce here, then maybe think about supporting me on Patreon. Bud out.